Right. Welcome to our special edition, kind of a mixed service dog handler chat and webinar. So today we're going to be talking about traveling with Tofu. And so Tofu, if you don't know, is LouLu's service dog, and they've recently done some travel outside of the country. And we thought it would be a good idea to share their experience and some of the hurdles they had to jump through in order to be able to do this, because we know this is a common struggle among service dog handlers, and the amount of paperwork is just like overwhelming to me. That doesn't take much when it comes to paperwork, but it's just the whole idea of trying to figure out the process when you never have is huge. So we wanted to put this together so that people could watch it, learn a little bit, hopefully make travel easier for other people, whether you're just traveling, first of all, either by plane in the country or traveling out of the country. So we're going to kind of start with like some basic training that you have to have before traveling. And so I'm sure there's no debate over that. You have to have the basic skills of sit down, stay calm. You want to kind of explain like maybe the levels of those basic skills.
So for any of the basic skills, you want them to be able to sit there for at least, I'd say, a good 10 minutes. Customs takes a while to get through. It's wild. Um, you'll also want to train on any public buses to get them used to the long flight. You'll want to take maybe Greyhound, visit a different state, sit in the back of the bus. It's similar to flying on a plane and being on the plane for a very long time. If you're able to take a train, those definitely help a lot with getting used to being on a plane for a very long time. Because what I was told by my vet, and it actually did work. I did it with Tofu, thankfully. Um, it makes them feel like they're already in the air because the train is going so fast. And so he now just, when we got on the plane, he just slept through the whole flight. Thankfully.
Nice.
Oh yeah, 9 hour flight. Bring potty pads. Make sure your service dog is trained for puppy pads. I don't like using puppy pads, but it is a must. Some airports, you can't get back into the airport as easily with an owner trained service dog. So some of them out of the country, like the one I went to in Rome, you have to exit the airport to get to the dog potty station.
And then you can't get
So
back in.
yeah, they question you. Oh my goodness, it's crazy. Um, what else did I do for training before bringing Tofu? I did a lot of off-leash training. You'll want at least you want your downstay to be really, really good. And make sure they're good with it off leash. You can practice maybe at a park. I don't suggest dog parks, but maybe a park with a lot of foot traffic. That way you're not in a store and other people who are bringing their pets into the store think, oh, I can have my pet off leash. You don't want to do that. So a public park would be best.
You can always use a long line, especially when you're training and your dog isn't solid. When you're training that off leash access, even if that long line is attached to a picnic table or something so that you can go further away. That's something that I train all my dogs with, is to be able to be on a tie out while I'm a little bit further in. Like normally I travel by my car, so I can attach my dog's tie out right to my car and walk away and like set up my tent or do something like that. And
Definitely.
all of that is early training for what LouLu is expecting. You don't have to go out into the busy part of a shopping mall and drop your dog's leash and walk 50 feet away in order to do the training. So think smart when you're doing off leash training. Let's keep everybody safe, including our dogs.
Definitely. You'll also want to train them without any gear, including a collar on. Do this in your own backyard, if possible, or inside your house, or in front of your apartment, anywhere it's safe to do it. I learned that quickly. Thankfully, Tofu is good with all his gear off. Um, in Egypt, the customs took off all of his stuff and they were going to throw it away, but they ended up not throwing it away. I'll
That
explain
would
real
scare
quick.
me if they threw it away.
Oh yeah, it scared me.
That's expensive gear.
Yeah, I was like, oh no, no. Um, the other thing that I trained awfully, not awfully, wow, I apologize. Trained before traveling, people in uniform, people with guns, people who speak different languages. You want to get them used to all of that. Because if they make a sudden move out of the country, say like Egypt, if Tofu had acted scared of the Egyptians talking in Arabic, they would have shot him. Unfortunately, they would have been scared of him and shot him. And I've had several Egyptians while there tell me that, which, yeah, you just
Scary to
want to
think
get them.
about.
Yeah, I never thought about that beforehand.
Well, and
Thankfully,
I
where
think
I
that's
live,
something that even if we're not traveling, we should be training our service dogs around our police, fire. Like, I don't have a whole lot of military around me, but I have other uniformed people that can be scary and could legally shoot my dog if they thought my dog was going to hurt somebody. And, so training them around that and having them comfortable. And what if they're not shooting your dog, but what if they're shooting somebody else or something else nearby? And the gunshot itself can then scare your dog. And now you have a
yes,
bigger issue too. So training around anything, knowing the culture in the area you're going to is going to really impact how you train as well. Like
yes,
in our
definitely.
area, we don't have a lot of military. In your area, you have a military boyfriend, so you have more exposure to that. And in the countries you're visiting, there is more of a military presence just in general. So definitely preparing for that.
Yes. What else did I train for? Thinking, I think I covered all of it. Do you have anything you want me to mention that I may have forgotten?
Um, Training wise, was there any like skills that you just absolutely loved that were like above, beyond, and basic? Like I know you posted a lot of pictures in our little group of downstays in restaurants or, food courts, that kind of thing, which is kind of standard issue for service dogs. But like, maybe what was the one thing that you relied on the most that you maybe hadn't thought would be such a big deal?
I think the most was him being super friendly because and just neutral. Um, it's really to me it was really scary being in another airport that wasn't in the country because I was like, oh no, what if he gets excited if a dog, comes by? Just training to have dog neutrality is 100% important. We had a dog come over and try to attack him in the lounge at the airport, and they kicked the dog out of the airport. Like Rome was like, we don't deal with this. You're out. And the woman fought about it. She was coming back to the US and they said, you'll have to find another. And I'm like, okay, thank gosh. Tofu just laid there and did nothing. He didn't even look up. I was just very happy. um, Basically, the service dog etiquette is very, very important, especially if you have an owner trained dog.
That's kind
Um,
of one of the nicer things about the bigger breeds like tofu is they tend to not be so worried about injury.
he
Whereas a
was just like,
smaller dog, like the Zool is pretty, like he doesn't care about most dogs. But if the dog actually got within a foot of him, he'd probably at least stand up, you know, at least stand
there's
up and show him how big he was.
another thing I learned that I almost forgot to mention. pick your service dog up, get them used to being carried. You never know what situation you're going to have to pick them up. In Egypt, we ran into a situation where one of the Egyptians fed tofu and caused the street dogs to want to attack Tofu. My boyfriend had to pick him up and carry him back to the Airbnb. The street
Yeah.
dogs are not very friendly there.
I could never pick Azul up if I tried, but my son has picked him up his whole life. Yeah. So
Oh,
even
that's
if you
awesome.
can't do it, find somebody who can, or, if there are two people working together, if they needed a surgery or something, you're going to have to be able to pick them up to get them on the table. So they need to be able to do that. I imagine a good safety position would be helpful too, like the sitting between your legs. Since I couldn't pick Azul up in most situations, his safety is get in between my legs. And if he sits, I know he's calm and relaxed. He can stand up without knocking me over, unlike some of my previous German Shepherds. But if he sits, I know he's calm and relaxed.
Oh, that's awesome. The other thing I almost forgot, teach them to ignore whistling, barking, their tail being pulled. You never know what people in another country are going to do. I had someone literally pull Tofu's hair on his head in Egypt at the airport because they were trying to claim him as their own dog. That was pretty interesting, but Tofu didn't react in a bad way. He was just kind of like, whatever. My mom does this to me all the time. I do it just in case little kids do it. This is good for inside the US, outside of the US, anywhere. Grab their muzzle, kind of gently squeeze their muzzle a little bit. I've had someone while traveling just grab him really tight on his nose, and thankfully he was good. And what they told me, they were like, we were making sure he was a real service dog because he didn't have the ADI certification. And I was like,
Yep.
okay.
And you can't prepare for everything in any way as someone could think to interact with your dog. I mean, Azul is a husky, so he's got the raised tail, right? Curly tail, which also means his hind end is exposed and open. And so we've had kids literally like almost give him an enema.
Oh no. The last thing I train is muzzle training. So the pilots out of the country decide whether your dog can go on the plane or not, even if it's an ADI dog. If you don't have a muzzle and they ask you to put a muzzle on your dog, they can deny you getting on the flight. Luckily, I did not have a muzzle. That's not the lucky part. I had a halty and they considered that a muzzle. So I
Nice.
was good. I actually forgot his muzzle at my apartment that I had bought. That was a bad situation. Um, but we made it. I had the pilot on my flight back to the US. None of my flights there actually asked me to put a muzzle on him. My flight back, there was a couple of the flight attendants who were terrified because of how big he is. And the pilot asked me if I had a muzzle for him. And I was like, I do, even though I didn't. Bad thing. The only thing I did was I put a sock because they told me to put a sock around his halty to cover his snout.
Right.
And then I just took it off on the plane after they were like, oh, okay, he's good. They were really worried because he wasn't ADI certified.
Right.
And I
Which means
had,
they've had bad
yeah,
experiences in the past. I can't fault people that have had the bad experiences for suspecting all dogs as not being really fully trained service dogs.
yeah, I didn't put them at fault for it at all. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna do what you ask. I've had people tell me they legally can't do that. And I'm like, well, he's not ADI certified. I don't know. From what I looked up, even on their policy, even ADI dogs can be asked to put a muzzle on, which kind of scares me. They might have had issues with an ADI dog, but
Probably. They've probably had
and
issues with all kinds of dogs.
oh yeah, pet dogs. Um, make sure the flight, whoever you're flying with, allows your dog's breed and carry stuff to prove it. What else did I train Tofu for? They did check his teeth in customs in Egypt. I don't know if all customs does that. So they like opened his mouth and like stuck their hand in his mouth. It was weird.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had that happen. So I was just like, oh, okay.
Well, and
Customs in
most
the
vets will
US
do
was
something
not like that.
similar, but making sure that the dog is okay with it and that they're used to it. My dogs have really good teeth, but I still check their teeth regularly just to A, for their concern, but B, they need to be used to that feeling in general. Because a kid could do it. Kid could stick their hand in and I want to see this black spot, especially Belle, because she has black inside her mouth in different spots.
Yep.
But
What else did
that's
I
a
teach?
good
Oh,
one.
I taught Tofu an anchor. We called it this command an anchor command only because I've had too many people try to steal him away from me. A lot of customs and some people in other countries will try to claim your dog as their dog, and they want to just sell it on the black market. Especially in Egypt. Basically, I just told Tofu anchor, and he put all his body weight, and they couldn't move him from away from me. And they were like, "This dog doesn't listen." And I'm like, I just told him not to listen to you. Like, so make sure your dog is very set on just you. Like, if you have, make sure he or she has a set command of don't go with this person. Stay right here with me.
That's a
That is
good one
very important.
too. I haven't actually worked on training that with Azul per se, but he kind of naturally has a behavior like that. And it's not really against people. He's more likely to go with a stranger when they tell him to, but he'll do it to me if he doesn't want to. And so, like, that's he's at a downstay in the backyard and he's comfortable and he doesn't want to go inside, things like that. So he stayed, and until I say we have to go now, then he'll like, all right, fine. But to put that on when somebody else is giving you a cue to do something, and we all kind of do a little bit of it probably with all the people in public that do oh, hi, puppy. Can I see you? Oh, look at me. Come over here. And we teach them to ignore that kind of thing generally. But I would imagine it has to be a lot more solid if you're going to be in areas where people are likely to try to just walk off with your dog.
Definitely. My experience that actually saved me in Tofu. Because the Egyptian guy had Tofu's leash and he grabbed Tofu's collar. And then I just told Tofu to anchor. I was like, Tofu anchor. And he just like dead weight, would not move.
Nice.
And yeah, the Egyptian guy was trying to get me to pay him to have Tofu. And I'm like, no, he's my dog. I don't pay you. And they just kind of got fed up with it because Tofu wouldn't listen to them once I said that. And then, I had Tofu stand up. I was like, Tofu up, follow. And that just means he ignores them and he follows strictly just me. And he ignores everybody around me completely because they had taken his collar and his leash. And I couldn't hold on to anything on him because they also took his harness. They gave it back to me after I met up with someone. I'm not really sure who this guy was. He was in a business suit. And then I showed them my passport. They stamped it. I got all his stuff back. And then I was out of the airport. And I was like, scary, scary situation. Just make sure they are very solid on tasks for just you and not everyone else. That
Well,
will
and then
save you
you
a
were
lot of
kind of
trouble.
telling me a little bit another time about how customs actually separated them too. So they do have to be able to go away from you with somebody else, even out of sight if need be, based on your giving them permission to go. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't think to train. I train my service dogs to do that on a general basis anyways, because I want alternate handlers to be able to do it. It's very rare. Like, I'm not going to usually make it. I don't think I've ever handed my dog off to a total stranger per se. But
Yeah, it was new to me
sometimes
for
it's a
sure.
total stranger to the dog, you know? Sometimes it's a
Oh,
person the
definitely.
dog doesn't know so that they can practice. So customs would be that exception of where you really don't have a choice. You have to hand them off to a total stranger. You have to tell your dog to listen to them. And that's where, like, I know a lot of trainers are into teaching their dogs cues in different languages so that the general public can't tell them what to do. But there's basic cues they got to be able to have in the language. And I wonder if it would even make sense to teach a couple of different languages for those basic ones. Like, say, if you knew per se you were going to travel to France, teaching them, the cues for sit and down at least, and maybe heel in English and French might be beneficial. Because I
Oh,
teach my
for
dogs
sure.
more hand signals where I don't need a verbal cue. But if I give them to a stranger, they're not going to know those hand signals or that body language.
No,
So our dogs still need to know at least the basics in the language that's going to be mostly talked in that area.
for sure. Would you like me to go into a little bit of what happened with customs in the US when they separated me and Tofu?
Yes.
So what happened with me and Tofu, customs here in the US, JFK specifically, they separated me and Tofu. He went with someone in a military uniform through a separate machine. And I had to go, he went this way, I went that way. And Tofu was looking for me. So I had to tell one of the guards, I'm just gonna call them a guard because they had a gun and they were standing there. I had to
Right.
tell them his commands. And so I told them, tell him work, follow me, and his work name. And then after he listened, he stopped looking for me and he was like, okay, I need to follow them. And I did tell him when I saw him, because I saw him for a brief minute, he was looking back for me. And I was like, Tofu, go people. And he was like, and then he turned around and he just followed them. And I was like, yes. I was not prepared for that. I had prepared him to do a downstay and then me call him through the machine. So that was all new to me and Tofu. I had been starting to teach him the go command so he could follow my boyfriend because he doesn't like to follow my boyfriend. I am not sure why. Um, Thankfully he knew it enough to be like, oh, okay, I get this. Let's go. And they took all his gear off him. They actually used a slip lead. They took his collar off, his leash off, his vest off, and they put a slip lead on him and they were trying to get him to follow them. I don't normally use slip leads.
But if the dog knows what to do, a slip lead shouldn't be dangerous in that kind of situation.
Oh
It's
yeah, it was
only
a
going to
very
be
loose slip
dangerous
lead.
if the dog starts to fight it. So yeah, I would agree. I don't normally lose slip leashes. However, my dogs are usually also in the house without a collar on. And if they happen to get out while I'm outside walking the other dog, you better believe I'm going to put my handle around the dog, for the leash I have, turning it into a temporary slip leash until we're back to the house safely.
For
So
sure.
I'm always prepared for something like that. So it's not our go-to and it's not what we want to use. However, it's not a bad idea to have the dogs have the experience of not reacting to it.
Definitely. What else happened while we were there? Oh, there was a lot that happened. I
Do
don't
you want to
know
talk a
where you
little
want me
bit
to get
about some
into.
of the paperwork that you had to do before the trip and like
Definitely.
how long in advance you started?
I started like 6 months in advance. It's it's a lot of paperwork. If you have an ADI dog, you don't have to worry as much. I guess the ADI programs just automatically send this stuff over and they do most of it for you. You still have to do the paperwork, but the program does it basically for you, from what I was told. I had to first get him an ISO compatible microchip. Now, these are different than your regular microchips. They're compatible with all international chip scanners. You'll also want to carry the card that comes with the chip in your pocket, just in case they don't believe you, even though it pops up as a scan. I also have his little microchip tag on his collar, just in case as well. I did that, and then I had to do physical exam. I had to get his rabies. Luckily, I already had gotten his rabies. And then we had to send in, the vet had to send in a bunch of paperwork months in advance to the USDA. I'm not sure what the paperwork was all about. I think it was about Tofu's exams. He had to check his teeth, his eyes, his hips, feet. You may have to get x-rays for certain countries. What else we did some blood samples. It was a long process. And after all of that, we ended up having to do the final paperwork 10 days, no more than 10 days before the trip. And that was basically another exam, another teeth check, and then we had to send it into the USDA. If you have a ADI dog, it's free of charge. If you don't have an ADI dog, the price ranges for the paperwork from about $60 to $200, depending where you live. I know all in all, the whole thing at the end cost me over $2,000 just to get him prepared for this trip to Egypt. It was pretty expensive, so make sure you're prepared way in advance for the price it may cost.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that, because most people think, the price of travel on the airplane or whatever, but all the paperwork and all the shots and all the medical stuff you need and everything ahead of time. Yeah,
It's
you better
crazy.
have a nice savings account for that trip.
Oh, for sure. I'm gonna briefly mention currently me and Tofu did not have to do this, but after July 31st, starting August 31st, no, August 1st. I don't know why I said that. Sorry, everyone. August 1st, if you go to a high risk country, you need to get a dog import permit to go there and to come back for customs. I don't know how much the import permits cost. The forms aren't out yet until July 15th. But if you go to a no rabies zone, there's a little bit different things you need for that, but you don't need as many things. So for the high risk zone, you need the permit for going out and in. From what I've read, you need the special rabies vaccine, even if your dog has had the rabies vaccine already. It's called booster. That's the special rabies vaccine. I apologize. My TBI is just crazy sometimes. So you need the booster, even though if your dog had already had its 3 year, just get the 1 year if you plan on traveling within a certain amount of time. So say your dog needs an update for, the rabies next year, but your trip is the year after. Just get the 1 year's rabies that year and just get the next 1 year's rabies just before your trip. It'll be a whole lot easier. You won't have to get the titer testing. You won't have to get some of the other blood testing they're going to be requiring. Yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. But it's going to be cheaper in the long run if you just get the rabies 1 year versus the 3 year before your trip. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it makes sense if the rabies, because like you said, most of us get a every 3 year rabies shot. And if your rabies was 2.5 years ago and you're traveling out of the country, that's not going to fly. Or if your rabies shot was 2 years ago, might be good for another 1.5 years here, but it's not the same, especially if you're going into a high risk area. So to me, it makes sense that they would require it to be within 30 days or 6 months or whatever. But it's something that I wouldn't normally think about. Like if I was trying to do it, I just, yeah, he's got his rabies shot. He's good. And not think about the timeline aspect of it.
Oh yeah. I had to research, this is also why it takes a lot. Research everything and anything before you leave. What else was I gonna say? Oh, so Egypt thankfully doesn't require a whole lot of different sort of vaccinations. The US unfortunately does for them to come back into the US. Whether they're a service dog or not, you have to follow the CDC and USDA stuff. Your country that you're traveling to may require some vaccinations that they have in their country that we don't have here. Um, Thankfully, I did not stay in Rome. Rome has one vaccination, because they asked me for the paperwork for that vaccination when I was getting on the flight. And I was like, I didn't think I needed this. And they're like, oh, you're not staying, you're transferring and going somewhere else. Okay, you don't need it. And I was like, thank gosh. I should have researched a little bit more. If you have a layover in any country, research that country. Don't do the same mistake as me and not research that country.
That's another
That was
thing
my
that I think a
mistake.
lot of people wouldn't think about because we're so used to layovers here in the US and nothing changes, other than if you have a problem in the airport and your dog isn't allowed to stay. That could happen in the US as well, but I mean, you don't go through all of that. The laws might change if you have a service dog in training, if you go out of the airport from state to state, but the federal laws are the same. So we just don't think about that when we have a layover in another country before
Oh
we
yeah.
get to our country that we are planning to stay at.
The other thing you want to make sure you have is, um, if your dog is a mixed breed, research the breeds that are allowed and aren't allowed, in whatever country, because even if they're mixed, they won't allow it and they'll just send them back or they'll euthanize them. And you'll want proof that they're not the breeds that they're trying to say, so get a DNA test and just carry the paperwork on you. That way you can be like, no, I have paperwork. This is what it is. I ran into that issue with Tofu. Thankfully, I had all his paperwork from AKC just with me. I was like, what if they say he's one of the breeds? So they kept calling him a husky and they kept asking me for a permit to have him in Egypt. But because he's a Samoyed, I don't need a special permit to have him in Egypt. So I had to prove that he was a Samoyed and not a husky. That was
And it's
all this
weird that they
paperwork.
would be so opposite with two breeds that are very, very similar. I mean, Huskies are generally smaller, but it's weird to think that Huskies would be the ones that they wouldn't allow without a permit, and Samoyeds would be. So
It's confusing. They have a 10, like they have 10 breeds that they allow into Egypt without the special permit. Um, Luckily Tofu was one of them.
they must have a
Gosh.
lot of people in that area that love that breed.
Yeah, I found out from one of the police officers who tried to buy Tofu off me. Um, they could quickly sell him for American dollars and bring the American dollars to the black market, and that's why their economy is so bad right now. They keep going around. I did find out it's illegal to give them American dollars as well. So they'll tell you a price for American dollars. They're like, oh, so they wanted, I forgot how much. Oh, they wanted like 3,000 EGP or something for tofu, and I think that's like a few $100s, American dollars. And I was like, no. And what they'll do is tofu is actually worth over 1 million EGP or something like that. And they'll bring him to the black market and sell him and get American dollars. And then they'll just swap it out and just basically break their banking system.
Mm-hmm.
And
Scary.
it's crazy. I'm just like, I'm never going to Egypt again with my dog. No, I'm not doing it. I don't recommend going to Egypt with your service dog.
Now, I know you also, because you were traveling with military, you were able to use services from the embassy here and there, and they were able to help you out as well. You want to talk a little bit about some of the things that they
Um,
advised you on or made it easier for you on, or
yeah, I made a mistake on my paperwork and Tofu's paperwork going there. So we had to buy visas. It's mostly you, and then they just add your dog onto your visa. I made a mistake, and Chris made a mistake because the war started with Israel and Hamas. So we had to cancel my trip. Well, they can decide and dictate when, like, if you're allowed to get a new visa to enter the country. I had to talk to the embassy to get permission to talk to them in Egypt. And then I finally got permission. They gave me a new visa. I just explained the whole situation. Um, if you have any issues when you go to another country, automatically, I forgot who you're supposed to ask for, but this is for anyone in general. A lot of people don't know this. You can ask to speak to someone from the American embassy. And even if you have a service dog, they'll send someone to help you. Um, it may take a while. You may have to stay at the airport, but it'll be a lot easier. So say like my incident with Tofu with one of the Egyptians trying to steal him. I could have asked, I didn't know this at the time. I could have asked to speak to someone from the American embassy and have them come and escort me. Um, but I didn't know that at the time. I found that out after my boyfriend told me and stuff. Oh my goodness. I should have done more research. Research is very important. But apparently a lot of people don't know this for
well, and
travel
it's
either.
hard to research something that you don't even know might potentially be a problem,
Yeah, I
you
never
know?
knew that they would try to take my dog. Like, oh. Um, in Egypt, they don't recognize service dogs at all. There's no such thing as service dogs there. So it was a little different. He did have his service dog gear on because of Rome. They recognize ADI service dogs in Rome. Not sure, not, yeah, they don't recognize owner trained service dogs in Rome, like at all, which makes it difficult. But they, I think they automatically assumed he was an ADI dog because of the red and black colors. I was told by someone to put him in red and black. It worked. They never questioned me.
Right. Well,
I
that and
think
I'm
they,
sure behavior,
oh
Tofu's
yeah.
behavior really helped as well.
Oh
But
yeah, they were
that's a
like,
good
oh,
point. And it's not like you're trying to look like an ADI dog. You're not trying to say you are something you're not, but you're trying to at least make yourself not stand out as a target.
thankfully, if anyone needs like good gear that looks very professional, the One Tigress Guardian set, very good. That's what
I
Tofu
like that
wore all the
one.
way.
That's what
And
both of my dogs wear.
well, I noticed a lot of dogs in Rome had similar gear in the airport as what Tofu was wearing, and it was all red and black. And I'm like, well, at least we blend in. There
Uh-huh.
were a few that had a yellow ADI vest, and the dog didn't like act crazy or anything, but think it really needed to go to the bathroom, and it like was pulling its handler a little bit, but Tofu does that sometimes as well, especially if he really has to go. Thankfully he did not have to go. I am gonna be training him to use toilets though.
Instead of
Easy.
the pee pads, the toilets.
Hmm. He did not want to use the pee pads,
He's
so
tall
he
enough
held
to
it
use a
in.
toilet.
Oh yeah.
We were
I'm gonna
kind of
make him
just
stand up.
joking about that today because we have a fenced-in back porch, and it's like the picket fences. And I noticed that like in like the last 2 weeks, we've had a lot of rain, and Azul really doesn't want to go down when the grass is wet. So he's been going out first thing in the morning, and he might lay out there for 2 hours without ever going down to potty. I'm like, I bet he's peeing through the fence.
Oh goodness, he might be.
Because he's not peeing on the fence. I'd be able to see it if he was hitting the fence. But he's not peeing on the fence. But I'm guessing because he's pretty good at his target. He can put it right where he wants it. And I think he's peeing on the grass from being up on the porch.
Yeah, that is one thing I did with Izzy. That's why it was so much easier to travel with Izzy. If we were on the train, she would just use the toilet on the train. In the hotel, she would just use the toilet in the hotel, and I would just wash it. Like I
I
get
never
one of
thought
these
to do that.
thingies
I
that
mean,
go
I've
on
had
the
cats that
toilet.
were trained to use the toilet before.
Oh yeah, I saw a YouTube when I was training Izzy, and I was like, I like to travel. This will come in handy. That way,
So
even if
get
you're on a
some
train or a
video of it while
plane,
you're
yeah,
training tofu so we can add that to the blog later on. This is how you train a
definitely.
dog to use the toilet.
Oh, I forgot. I did post a link to the new CDC regulations, in the chat.
Yes, I will make sure that gets included on the YouTube link as well
Yep.
when we get this posted to our Crazy to Calm YouTube channel.
A little bit back to the paperwork. The CDC has a thing called DogBot, and it's right on the link, right at the top, in that little thing where they say August 1st. Um, you can go into there. It's different for every country coming back from the US. I'm not back from the US. Wow.
Coming
The
back to
heat
the
is
US.
dying. Yeah, back to the US. Oh my goodness. Um, you just want to take that little dog bot test and it'll tell you what you need to get back into the US. I was hoping to have all of that prepared, but it's not available until the 15th. Which makes it difficult. It was supposed to be available by the 7th, but I guess they must have had to fix something.
Pushed it back.
So I'm
So
just
I
like,
know
well, that,
you've mentioned a couple of terms that like to me they make sense. I know what they are, but there's a whole lot of people who maybe don't know what CDC stands for. So you
what
want to
the,
go through a couple of things like that, like where you're actually going to the form, what they are, and how they regulate things a little bit.
I'm not sure how they regulate
Like the
anything, but
CDC is the Centers for Disease Control.
yes,
So
I
they're going
didn't
to be
know what
more
the
concerned
CDC
about your
was.
dog
I
bringing diseases
apologize.
back into the US.
Yeah,
Whereas the USDA is the United States Department of Agriculture. So they're
Tofu
only
and Kiki, get
curious
back here.
and curious, like their regulation is all animal based and are going to deal with any animal coming back
Sorry for
because
yelling.
agriculture is their field. But so every organization that
Okay.
you have to deal with is going to have a little bit of a different spin
Yeah,
on what their concerns are. Therefore, their
definitely.
paperwork is going to look different into what they need. So it's not going to be standardized amongst the different organizations. Do you have to deal
Oh
with
yeah.
any other organizations besides those two? And
I think there
customs?
was I think there was one organization that I saw walk through the airport, but they were not an American organization. I don't know the name because it was written in like whatever language Rome has.
Right?
it was like it was a red and black vest, that's for sure. I ran into a bunch of those actually. And they weren't really bad dogs or anything, but they were definitely certified dogs because they had the cert tag on all of the vests. Tofu did not have it because he's not certified by anyone. Um, but generally they were all super nice to me in Tofu. In Rome, I could say a few things about the JFK airport. That's don't be afraid to report anything that you feel is unnecessary. I reported a guy because I get pushed in one of the wheelchairs because I just can't walk through the whole airport. It's just too much for me. And he didn't want to push me in the wheelchair at first because I had a service dog. No, that's no excuse. He's like, I can't push her because of the dog. And someone else was like, why not? And I was like, he stands next to me and he has nothing to do with you. And he was like, no, I will not do it. I refuse. So make sure you stand your ground on that stuff. It is allowed, it is legal, and they can, in fact, push you in one of their wheelchairs with your dog next to you. He just didn't want to do it. Because his next excuse was, well, she's standing there. She can obviously walk. Why do I have to give her a wheelchair?
That
Why?
that can be a big thing. And it's their court's responsibility to hire staff and people that can deal with
Right
things
back.
like that. So I mean, that was his job, and if he's not capable of doing it because he's afraid of your service dog or because he's biased, then they need to find somebody who can do it. And I know in Lulu's case, like he was pretty much told by supervisors that this guy had to do it, but that can make things more complicated as well when somebody who doesn't want to be doing a job is forced to do a job. None of us like that. So that can be really important that you don't just give up and, oh, they didn't want to do it, so I'll do it myself or whatever. Then we end up suffering for that because the trip is harder on us in general. Lulu froze for
It's
a
not you.
moment.
Tofu, get in here. I guess.
That is life with dogs, where we have to stop automatically what we're doing to do what our dogs are. Mine finally fell asleep.
Sorry about that. I thought Tofu was being bad. He was underneath the camper, but there's a dog on the property. I don't know. So I made them all come in here. I apologize.
That's okay. We
I was
definitely
like,
sometimes have to get up and deal with our dogs. That's part of having them.
what
But
else?
there was something. I forgot what it was. I know you did like you had to spend some time in like food like other airports while you were waiting for your connecting flight. Did you notice like anything different as far as like if you had to spend time in the food court with your service dog? Were you treated any differently? Like they didn't want you around their food or anything like that than what you would experience in the US? She may have to reconnect. There you are.
Okay. I don't know what happened. I'm guessing
You
my
froze again,
Wi-Fi went down for a second. Oh no.
but you're back. But so, did you experience anything to where like people you were encountering maybe in a food court or some other part of the airport where they acted differently or behaved differently compared to what you would expect in the US? As far as like that dog can't be in here, kind of the access issues we're used to dealing with, was there anything different?
No, they all basically welcomed me in Tofu. I'm not sure if it's because you can tell he's for mobility
Right?
because I use him a lot. But they never questioned me. It was like night and day versus the US. I was just like, oh, this is so nice. This is so nice. I did notice that they gave someone else a hard time though. They had a psychiatric service dog. I don't know the team. I'm pretty sure they're from the US. Um, and basically they would say, "You don't look disabled. What are you doing in here with this dog?" And this was a lot of the shops at the airport, which is weird. You'd think airports where they allow pets, but then again, we were out of the country. I don't know if they allow pets in the airport there.
Right.
And
Well,
basically,
and
they were
some
basically
places
told
don't
to leave.
recognize a psychiatric service dog as being a service dog. And so I think it's kind of important to A, know the service dog laws where you're going, but B, there's no reason that you have to label your psychiatric service dog as a psychiatric service dog. You could just label them as a service dog, and I get it. Some people like to use the PTSD service dog patches, or like I've used ones that say medical alert service dog. And sometimes it's helpful to be able to state that in basic information to get less questions, but sometimes it might be more helpful to just have plain service dog labeling so that you don't have to deal with those stereotypes.
Um, on some of Tofu's gear, I did get gear that was in different languages. Basically, that little thing that was on top of his harness set, I just swapped it out for something that was in their language that said service dog.
Nice.
Yeah, I was like, it might be easier if they can read it.
Right. That's a good point too. If you're
Unfortunately,
traveling, to an area that's Spanish, and not that you would have to replace all your patches on your thing, but at least the main one, like service dog, would be very helpful. I can see that one as being good. So it looks like Lulu's Wi-Fi is messing up a little bit as well. Um, and I don't know
wait,
when we started this. I know we have a lot more that we want to do as well. Trying to look at the time here. Um,
we might have to make
so
three
do you
parts of
want
this.
to show us a couple of your favorite pictures of traveling? Or maybe your Wi-Fi won't hold up for
Sure.
that.
See if I can find any on my laptop. Currently on my laptop, but that's fine. I sent other people photos. Actually,
Yeah.
I can just log into my Facebook. Does anyone
You had
mind me
also
doing a screenshot?
mentioned while you're doing that, that you had like all your AKC paperwork and if you could, put a random guess of a number, like how many different things of paperwork, how did you carry all your paperwork? What did you do with that to make it easy and readily accessible?
All in a folder, and I kept it on me specifically. Like, if you have a backpack, just put it all in your backpack. Um, certain custom people will take it. Like in Egypt, they'll take it to try to hide it. Same thing with any electronics. I know a lot of service dog handlers actually have GoPros. Wear the GoPro on you. Make it a necklace, anything. Or they'll take it. And they'll say it's illegal. Um, this is Egypt though. They'll basically tell you it's illegal to have there just so they can sell it. Yeah.
Any reason
It's
to get you to give it to them? Kind of
and
like
you can't really argue.
we deal with having a business page on Facebook. I get messages all the time that say my business page violated a copyright issue with a photograph or something, and I have to verify that I am who I say I am or something, those messages, and they're spam. It's somebody trying to get me to give them my personal information so that they can pretend to verify my business page. And they're not related to Facebook in any way. And I mean, I imagine that's what you're dealing with in the airport. Same type of thing. Somebody who's pretending to be customs and saying, oh, you can't have that, hoping that
Oh yeah.
you're not smart enough and that you will just surrender it because it's probably worked by a lot of people. And then they can make good money off of it.
Here we go. I'm just signing into my Facebook so I can show you some
Yeah.
photos. I wish I could have done more with tofu in Egypt. But Egyptians are not friendly with dogs. They don't like dogs. They won't allow you anywhere there's a restaurant or anything on like you can go to an outside restaurant, but you can't go inside a building. Me and Tofu had to wait outside a lot. This was before the street dog incident, no, way before the street dog. And because they just say, mm-mm, no dog, no dog allowed. And you can't really argue with them because they have no protections for service dogs there because view they view dogs as disgusting creatures basically, but they're
Hmm.
legally not allowed to kill them, which is really interesting because if the dog has rabies, they're not allowed to kill it. They can't even detain it. They can just let it spread the rabies. It's a very interesting law that they have. You'd
They don't
think, but
recognize them as service dogs, but yet they also recognize them as an animal that shouldn't be threatening. They just don't like it. I know I have a client from the Middle East area. Don't know, like, and I mean, she's always been in the US, but her parents are Middle Eastern descent. And she'll probably watch this video. So, but there's a culture area there, you know? So when they have family visiting them, even though parents are totally used to the service dog, the rest of the family has different viewpoints on what dogs should be. And, you know, this whole like, I have a service dog laying on the couch beside me right now. They're in my house, they can be on the property, but that might be disrespectful in some cultures, you know, for them to be on furniture that people use and things like that. So it can be really, really helpful to know that about where you're going. And, you know, what might seem normal to us may not seem so normal to somebody else.
it's something that's super duper important when traveling with a service dog. Make sure you fill out the dot form and you fill out the other country's forms. You fill it out for the flights in the US plus the flights out of the US. I did not do that, and I had to fill it out quickly in Rome.
Say, how many of those did you have to fill out?
All in all, four. No, I had to fill out the flight to Rome and then the flight from Rome to Egypt. And when you do the ones for out of the country for their airlines, make sure you put like the date backwards because that's how they date them.
Yes. A lot
Weird,
of countries
but
do that. The dates are different so that they go, so we go
it was
month,
like
date,
day.
year,
Yeah.
and they do
For
it
them, I think it was
opposite.
day, month, and year. Or no, it was year, day, and month. There we go. It was like confusing.
Yep.
And then we thought we had all the paperwork done for the flight, and they were like, we emailed them. They were like, "Yep, you're good." Then they emailed me again, and they were like, "You're denied. You didn't have all the paperwork." And it was like, just said. So I had to go
Right.
back, and Delta in the US didn't have my paperwork because I thought I only had to message ITA, which is sponsored by Delta. So I thought they
I've heard that
shared the
before
information.
too. Where like
They
they
do not
submitted
share.
it and it was online, but the airport personnel couldn't pull it up for some reason.
Yeah, it was confusing, but they don't share the information. The out of the country airline will not share, even though they're sponsored by the American airline, you know, they won't share the information with them. You have to put it in all separately.
Right.
So I had to put in 4 to go there and 4 to come back. But that's only because I had to do the Rome airport one. Um, I didn't lie exactly about tofu not being certified. but I also didn't say he wasn't certified. I didn't
Gotcha.
exactly know what to put on that paperwork. We did have an incident where we had to walk down the stairs of the plane outside of the airport, go through customs in the airport, and they were like, "Whoa, do you have his certification paperwork?" And I was just like, uh, how did I get myself out of that one? Oh, I said he was owner trained and he was a mobility dog. And I told them I was American. I was like, I'm American. He's owner trained. And they're like, no, no, no. You need certification. And I was like, well, I'm just catching a flight to the US. And they're like, oh, okay, you can go. And I think it was the whole fact that I was going back to the US that they were like, we don't care. You're not staying here. It's whatever.
Right.
So I'm worried
You
if
weren't
I
going
ever
out into
travel
their
to them.
public areas.
Yeah. Like I'm wondering how hard it's gonna be if I do take a trip to Rome.
I do know that
I'm
there are countries out there that won't let a service dog in that's not ADI certified.
yep.
I don't know which
Um
ones they are, but I've heard that from other people.
I have I think Rome is one of them because they were being super, super strict. They thought I was staying in Rome and I was like, no. And then they asked me what breed he was. I guess they have certain breeds that are illegal there. And I showed them again Tofu's certificate from AKC, his lineage paperwork that says he's a purebred Samoyed. And after they found out he was a Samoyed, they were all like, oh, and like we're loving on him and stuff. And it's like, okay, I'm just gonna let them do whatever because they're letting me through now. I'm not
Right.
dealing with it. I had already had a flight there. I think it was like a only a 3 hour flight, which was fine, but the airport was Egyptian airport was not the best. Not the best at all. Like trying to get back to the US with your service dog, I just don't recommend going to Egypt with your service dog.
Well, and
I
your service dog ended up spending a lot of time in I think you guys had a B&B, right? Or the place that you were staying because it simply wasn't safe to have him out and about and you couldn't go and do things with him. And so there you have to look at is it worth all the paperwork, all the time, all the expense to get the paperwork done if you're not going to be able to use them anyways while you're there?
Oh yeah. It's to me, if I ever go back to Egypt, I'm not bringing tofu. It's just not worth it. He'll just stay in the air conditioned Airbnb and anywhere you walk, even if your dog has to go pee, people will be scared. Like I think it's just because of how big he is. We had a little shop under our Airbnb, so it made it a little easier. The shop guy, he he didn't tell us we couldn't have tofu in the shop, but he didn't like the fact that tofu was there until like maybe 3 days later. He then petted tofu. He's like, good listener, good listener. And it's like, yeah, he's trained. He's not gonna bite you. They're very used to the street dogs biting them there. But then again, they kind of torment the street dogs. So
Right?
what do you expect? Like some of the street dogs I saw, they'd be sleeping and they'd go over to them and start kicking them. And then they'd wonder why the dog turned around and was like, rah. So they thought Tofu was going to automatically attack them a lot. And it's like, no. Chris did say if we do go to like a third world country with Tofu, we're getting one of those backpacks that he can go in and Chris is carrying him because I can't carry him, unfortunately. But no, thank gosh I didn't bring him to the pyramids or anywhere like that. The street dogs are like very territorial, very over there. They have young puppies running around all over the place. it's a little crazy. And
And I can
yeah,
imagine, anytime you have this brand new male come into the neighborhood, it's going to make dogs a little bit more defensive.
we didn't really have issues with the male dogs. It was the female dogs.
They
They
were the ones
were,
protecting the babies.
oh yeah, and they were like the leaders of their packs. And it was like, really? Like, we had one incident where we were walking Tofu, and this was where he got fed by the person because the person was not, yeah. So the Egyptian really liked Tofu because he's soft and fluffy, so he gave him a treat. And it was like a little milk bone treat. The street dog saw it. Bad idea. We had like several street dogs surrounding us. They were barking in Tofu's face. Tofu did kind of react when they got in his face. Like they were like this close to his face. So he like stood his ground and he barked at them, but he didn't like go after them.
Right.
And I think that was an okay situation for him to do that. And he hasn't done it since. And um yeah, Chris just ended up picking him up and carried him to the Airbnb. We were like,
No
nope,
more.
nope, done. That was his like second walk. The first walk, there weren't any street dogs around. So we're like, okay, it's whatever. No street dogs. No, they're hiding in like all the little alleys and they're watching. And as soon as someone, like even an Egyptian, if they gave Tofu any, like if they petted Tofu or was nice to Tofu, those street dogs were right on us. They were like, not in my territory. This ain't allowed.
Right.
And I know some handlers are like they're gonna bring their dog no matter what. I would say Egypt is definitely not a safe place to bring your service dog. Just from what happened with Tofu, the street dogs are the main cause, and you don't know which ones have rabies and which ones don't. Well, do. Basically, all the cops told me there was, if they bite you, good luck. They may or may not be sick. They call it sick, but it's really actually just rabies.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay. He did get to, unlike most dogs, uh, if they're traveling to other places, they probably won't be able to do what Tofu did. Like, he got to go to the embassy and go on their grass. But, I think that's only because my boyfriend works there. He works, and then he's going to be stationed somewhere else soon, or he works close to it. I don't know what the situation is,
Right. But
but
close enough of a
yeah.
connection that you got some special privileges because it was the only place he could go safely.
Oh yeah, we let him run around a little bit. He got to meet all the people, and they were like, "Oh, big dog,"
Right.
and so that was great. Yeah, the newer. So there is some other places in Egypt that might be safer for your dog if you stay at one of the really, really, really expensive hotels, but it's like $1,000 a night. Their hotel is like all fenced in and no street dogs are inside the property. And they have green grass and all that good stuff. And some of them are pet friendly, some of them aren't. They generally, if you have a small service dog, you're golden. You're pretty much golden to be at those hotels. They like small dogs. Big
Mm-hmm.
dogs, you're more or less likely to get denied. That's what happened with us, and we ended up going with an Airbnb that was owned by someone in France. Make sure you check the Airbnbs, where they're from. If they're an Egyptian owning the Airbnb, don't get that Airbnb. You're more than likely going to be denied if you have a large dog. If you do end up wanting to go there, heeding the warning, just take just take the warning. It's very difficult. And do not go there with a banned dog. And I looked into the permits. Um, you have to live in Egypt to have those permits. So if you're just visiting, you can't even fill out
Get
a
a
thing.
permit.
Yeah. So if you
Right.
go there with a German Shepherd, they're going to take your German Shepherd. They're either going to have it sent back by itself or with you, or they're taking it and doing whatever they want with it. They may sell it on the black market, they may just go beat it up, or they'll just put it out in the desert to fend for itself. Unfortunately, um, I'm just glad tofu is not on the banned list. I call it the banned list because you have to have a special permit thing. And it's pretty crazy. It's insane to me how they do that. But then again, in Egypt's laws, even if you have a visa yourself and it's just you traveling there, they can deny you entry.
Right.
And it's like this place is a little crazy for me. But it was nice kind of there. It smelled really bad a lot. Um, if you do go there, make sure your dog wears boots. There's human pee and human poop, dog pee, dog poop all over the place. Don't let them sniff anything. You never know if they have, something that's catchy like parvo and stuff like that. I don't know if parvo's a thing out there, but I was not taking chances. Especially where Kiki was like, he's still under a year old and he'd be coming back with that. So they
Right.
have no pet stores. They
Definitely
have
want to make sure you're up to date on all vaccinations for an area. So if you're
yes.
one that doesn't like to do vaccinations for your dog, you probably don't want to travel out of the country.
Yeah. If you're one of the people who don't want vaccinations at all, like even me, I had to get a rabies vaccination before going. I had to talk to my doctor, and that's part of the paperwork of going. And yeah, it's crazy. It's hard work, craziness. Next time I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. I can get a direct flight from Maine to Europe because it's like a 6 to 7 hour flight. And I think that's all I'm gonna actually do from now on. I'm not gonna do the whole 10-hour flight.
10 hours is quite a bit much, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Um, what was I doing? Oh, back to the advocating for your service dog. If your service dog needs to use the restroom, and if you have to get pushed in a wheelchair, JFK specifically, tell them that you're going to report them if they don't allow your dog to go to the pet station. And the reason for that is I kept telling the guy, I was like, hey, there's a pet station. Can I go there real quick? And he was like, no, I'm not letting you. And then what happened was Tofu ended up peeing on the floor and pooping on the floor. And he's like, great, your dog just pissed all over the floor. Somebody's going to slip in it and break their head open. And excuse my language, that's exactly how he said it to me. I did report him. Apparently, he's been reported before for stuff like this. Um, he ended up also telling me, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna make you miss your flight now. I did end up missing my connecting flight to Boston. Make sure you're very firm and you're just like, no, I need to do this. If I'm missing my flight, I'm bringing my dog to the bathroom.
Right?
Um, I wish I had done more of it, but my legs were just too tired from going in the Rome airport. So in the Rome airport, they didn't exactly have people to push you in wheelchairs. So I was like, oh, okay. So I just had to like find my way through the airports with a different language. If you have an iPhone, they work wonders. Listening to people in other languages, and you can just go. I use my watch a
Android
lot.
has a great app for that too. That
I-
can you can record it voice or you can type it and then it will play back in the language that you select for that area and allow somebody else to be able to speak in their language into your phone and then it'll translate to you in English.
Yes,
That
the
can be
Apple
very,
Watch
very
has that.
important when you're traveling overseas because if you can imagine that it can be hard to communicate with our puppy what we want them to do till we teach them to read more of our body language and stuff. And then when we go to a different country where everybody speaks a different language, communication is going to be the hardest thing. So use technology to your advantage. I would say make sure you have plenty of pictures of your dog so you have proof of that dog too.
Yes.
But were you able to pull up some pictures you wanted to share?
Oh, yes, I was getting to that. I was forgetting. Oh, no. Oh my goodness, people are sending me messages. No, just because I'm on here doesn't mean, okay. How did I get on there? I don't know. Okay. Where do you go on Facebook for your regular photos?
If you open your profile page,
My photo. Oh,
you
my
usually
photos.
see photos. Whoops. I just clicked the
See,
wrong
I gotta
button. I
scroll
might be able to
down.
pull up yours.
I will do screen share. Is that okay if I do screen share?
Yes. Yes, yes.
Okay. Awesome. And share. I just figured it'll be easier doing screen share. Let's see.
Definitely.
There we go. So some of my favorite photos would have to be, I forgot where this is. It's not a Vatican, but it's one of their citadels. There we go. It's one of the big citadels that's in Egypt, and it is very nice. We had to wear plastic on our shoes if you couldn't take your shoes off, which made it a whole lot easier. Let's see, my other favorite. Here's another good one of the Citadel. It is very pretty there. I just took some random photos.
And now, would that be a place that would allow your dog or no?
No, it's a very religious place. Um, they don't expect tourists to wear anything at this place, but other religious places, you have to wear, if you're a woman, you have to wear a head covering. We did not visit those places. Basically, she has to wear that because she's from Egypt, but it's fine. I was explained that by our tour guide, who also wore one. They're like, any religious place, we're supposed to wear these. And it's like, oh, okay. And then I was like, am I supposed to wear one? And she was like, no, you don't have to. And more of the pretty. This was my one of my favorite places. The other favorite place, I don't have pictures because they didn't allow pictures, but it was a church, a Roman church, and it was everything inside was gold.
Nice.
It was all gold, and I was like, "Ugh, I really wish I could have gotten photos. Oops, sorry about that.
What about pictures of tofu like in the airports?
Yes. Looking for those. How do I do this? Oh, right here. There we
Yeah,
go.
you should be able to click on the X up there on the Facebook to
These
get out
are
of the
these are some of the street
top
dogs.
left.
That was outside of a museum. Yeah. So I got a couple pictures of the street dogs at the museums. I do have more photos, but they're on my camera still. There's another one. See, I know I posted photos of tofu at the airport. I didn't
They're
have
probably
many.
up at the top of your. There's one.
So here's one. This was at the Rome airport. We were in the lounge. Oops, don't mind the. That's for America. That's for the US. I also have another one right there that does not help my case. I apologize, everyone. But basically, he was a good boy. I didn't get many pictures of him. Unfortunately, this was when we arrived. I think the second time or the first time. One of the times. Um, We were waiting for someone to help me go to the lounge, and then I found out the lounge was right around the corner because I couldn't read the signs. Oh, it's so
Right.
bad.
You could have walked.
And then, oh, this was definitely when we first arrived. This is the lounge that we were um, in Rome. I stayed there because we had like a 10-hour layover. And I was like, free food, why not just pay the 40 extra dollars to stay at the lounge? And they
Right.
had showers there, if you're ever passing through. I forgot, Fumicino. The name is actually right behind our photos. So this was the VIP Canova. Can't pronounce any of that, but that's the name of the airport right there. And
Gotcha.
if you're ever traveling there, definitely recommend getting this with your ticket. It's just worth the extra $40. And all the
I
food was
can
free,
see.
the
I mean, it would
snacks
be
were
more
free.
comfortable. It would also be quieter, allow you to do some more rest.
Oh yeah, and I was able to take a shower. The showers are so big. I just had Tofu do a downstay outside of my shower, and he did really, really good. I was able to get a shower, um, and change clothes. That was amazing. Oh, this is Tofu in the Airbnb. It's You can't really tell much, but this was one of the rooms. Technically, you're not supposed to stay in the same Airbnb if you're not married, but it's different for people who are not Egyptian. So for us, we were allowed to stay in the same Airbnb because we're American. And the guy was from France and he didn't care. We went through so many Airbnbs because they would ask how like what size and breed tofu was. And then we would tell them, he's a Samoyed, he's a larger dog. And they would just say, nope. We had that issue with the hotels as well. So we just kind of was like, all right. And then, oh, here's another picture. This was our gates that we arrived at the airport in Rome. It's a pretty big airport, like, but we were close to like all kinds of little shops. Okay, they were like almost like Victoria's Secret and stuff kind of shops, but still nice. They were
I do
decent.
know a lot of the bigger airports have a little mall inside.
Oh yeah, it definitely did. Uh, I have some photos. Oh yeah, this was Egypt at night. We were on a dinner cruise. I wanted to bring tofu, but we figured they would tell us no, so we did not bring tofu. Oh yeah, that's their hospital. One of
So
their
say I can
hospitals.
kind of read that word.
It's the Cleopatra Hospital, which is interesting that they call it that. What else picture? Oh yeah, I have so many pictures that I love from Egypt. There's one that I took that is a really, really nice picture of the step pyramid. Oh, right here. This is one of my most favorite pictures. So we're on a different part of the pyramid that's related to the step pyramid. It was like a building or something. I can't remember what the tour guy said. Tour guide. Wow, I'm terrible. And yeah, that's the step pyramid. We did walk all the way over to the step pyramid. It was nice. This is down below that little fence that you saw looking at the step pyramid. I don't know if they actually allow people to tour down there or not, but it's really far down there.
It looks really, really far down there. Like I might make it down, but I wouldn't want to come back up, especially not without my dog.
Oh yeah, I had if you have mobility issues, be prepared to have a really rough time walking around Egypt. It's all very steep. Everywhere you walk, it's just like a steep hill. Sorry about that. I don't know why his stuff popped up. And then we got to see all these cool things. This was I forgot what this was, but Google Maps remembers it. But this is the big statue, one of the big statues, and this is a museum that we visited. It was a nice if you have mobility issues, this museum is pretty decent. There's like one flight of stairs and that's it, and it's all flat. It's it was very easy to go around. There is an outside, so here's some of the outside. It's pretty much flat out there, which I like that a lot. Almost everywhere gave me a discounted price because I was disabled. Our tour guide is the one who told them I was disabled. Some places didn't because I didn't have a disability card or proof that I was disabled, but you can definitely tell that I'm disabled. This is the outside of that citadel.
Nice.
It is really big. I didn't like the walking around this area. It was so steep. I was like, I need tofu, like right now. It was bad. But I enjoyed Egypt quite a lot. Oh, here's the name of the citadel. I take random pictures. Salah al-Din Citadel. So yeah. And it was really nice. Oh yeah, this is before you go inside the citadel. I got close up so it can get details. I just love the details. It was so pretty there. And it's a huge place.
Sounds like a whole day in itself just exploring that.
Oh yeah, this was on top of the building next to the Citadel, I believe. And I tried to get a good photo, but my hair is so bad, but it's okay.
It's fine.
And it's
It's a
it
huge
was
city.
a good experience. Yes, for sure. It was a really great experience. Here's another. So the street dogs are literally everywhere. Here's another street dog. They're literally everywhere. Some of them were just like we were new. I forgot what this place was called, but this is part of this place. Something like that. I know it had like a lot of the military stuff there. I can't remember if it was the War Museum or not. But this was the beginning of it. Yeah, it was the National Military Museum. So yeah, it's huge there. Like, but I mostly wore my sweatshirt. There's a photo. This is inside the military museum. It's just so pretty. I don't know. I was just awestruck when I was there. I really like these like little lights. So they don't use those. I think those they put candles in, but you can tell those are the lights that they actually use.
Right. Those would have been the old lights, original lights. They
Oh
left for
yeah. And then there's a
decoration purposes.
doorway.
Nice,
A lot
nice.
of them
Well,
had to
we
be
should probably
replaced.
wrap this up because it is an hour long already.
Definitely.
But we just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an example of what it's like, some of the hardships, some of the things you have to do ahead of time, and help you to kind of like weigh the pros and cons of, is it going to be worth it to do this, to try this with a service dog or not? Is it worth trying to get your dog ADI certified? That's a whole different route that a lot of owner trained dogs try to go with. It's very challenging because most places that can do the ADI test refuse to test an owner trained dog. So
Sucks.
there's challenges there as well.
I would say it's worth it if you want to get your dog ADI certified, and you go to Europe. Europe is a little more friendlier if you have an ADI certified. Just know a lot of countries don't recognize psychiatric. It probably wouldn't be worth it if you had a psychiatric service dog. A
And you
lot of
didn't have other
places, yeah.
issues too. I know a lot of dogs are dually trained, so you might have a mobility and a psychiatric service dog. And
Yep.
so you play to the strengths of the country you're going into.
Like if you have a dual trained dog, mostly use the mobility stuff. You can still use, the psychiatric stuff. But I think in Rome, it helped me because I was using Tofu for mobility. So they were like, oh, he's wearing red and black and he's doing mobility work. So, okay, he's a mobility dog.
Well, and I know a lot of places don't necessarily recognize medical alerts either because it's so hard to prove whether a dog is truly alerting or not. And so, I mean, it's totally recognized by the ADA, but a lot of places are going to give you more of a headache with that. And so, having dogs that are duly trained as mobility and medical alert can really make a huge difference. For some
For
reason, the
sure.
mobility alert or mobility dogs are more recognized as service dogs, even here in the United States.
That is true. I think that's what helped me and Tofu out the most in Rome is because he's mostly a mobility dog. He does do medical alerts. Um, but yeah, I kind of played it to the favor of mobility.
Mm-hmm.
I was
And I
like,
mean, I've kind of pushed that a little bit in some places as well with Azul. I'm going to struggle really with Belle because she's smaller and she can't do some of the mobility work. Like, she can still do the forward momentum pull that I need because that's so light, but it'll be iffy. Like, she could do a light counterbalance, but if I was really struggling, she couldn't do a real counterbalance. You know, thankfully,
yeah,
usually all I need is a light one because that tension on the leash usually keeps me aware of my surroundings. But like if
in
I were
Egypt, you'd
Azul
probably need
helps on
full.
slippery surfaces and stuff, and Belle won't be able to help on that
Oh
because
yeah,
she's
same
too
with
small.
Tofu. I think that was the other issue because everywhere was sand. It was so difficult to walk on by myself. And I'm so
Mm-hmm.
used to having Tofu help me. And it was so difficult, but it was worth it. I wasn't able to do things the next day, but it was still worth it.
Right. Well, I mean, we get so used to having that dog with us all the time that it's hard to decide, is it worth it to do this trip without the dog if that's what it's going to require, or is it better to skip the trip? I mean, those are decisions a service dog handler has to make in almost every day in what they're doing, even a trip to the grocery store. Is it going to be better to have my dog with me, or is it going to be better to leave my dog home?
Exactly. Like my next trip, I'm hoping is going to be during Christmas, and I'm going to hopefully be going to the UK. UK, I believe, recognizes owner trained dogs from what I've read. And so it'll just be a lot easier in the UK.
Next week, we have our service dog handler chat with Dr. Holly Tett, and she might be able to answer those questions as far as what UK laws are around service dogs. Because she lives there.
Oh, that would be awesome. Because I really want to go visit there and I want Tofu to come with me. And I know a lot of the owner trained dogs go there.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I believe I know recently, like a few years ago, they started recognizing psychiatric dogs, which is great. I wish other places there, like in Europe, would recognize psychiatric dogs, but we'll just have to wait for them.
Yep. Well, all right. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. We hope that has helped people that are thinking about traveling internationally and kind of the work that goes into it. Make sure you're contacting both your local airports, that find out the laws for the other airports you're going into, customs, how you're going to get back, because the last thing you want to do is to take your dog out of country and not be able to bring them back into the US. So, all things to consider. I think we're going to do another one of these in a couple of weeks that talks about packing for long trips like this. And we may potentially pull up another one or two based on the information and the feedback we hear from this Zoom. So if you're interested in learning more about traveling with your service dog, stay tuned to crazytocalm.net and we'll have more information there. And with that, have a great day.